Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm Josh Peschko, and I'm the head of compliance strategy at Talos. Today, I'll be your moderator for our webinar titled Is Multi-Dealer Execution the Future of MiCA Compliance? Now, as you may know, MiCA represents a major step forward in regulating crypto markets across Europe. With many of the requirements coming into effect at the end of this year, MiCA will reshape how digital assets are regulated and traded within the EU in 2025 and beyond. In traditional markets, comparing execution quality is standard practice. But in the rapidly evolving world of crypto, even the most sophisticated institutional players can find this complex, difficult to achieve, and even more difficult to prove. In today's session, we'll dive into Section 6 of the July 31st clarifying release from ESMA titled Best Execution, with a specific focus on the regulatory challenges when relying on a single dealer for execution, the subsequent complexities of a multi-venue dealer setup, and we'll provide some solutions along the way. So whether you're a broker, compliance officer, or a trader, this session is designed to help you navigate these regulatory challenges. I'm joined today by two excellent panelists. Frank van Zegveld, head of sales at Talos, who's going to walk us through how our platform addresses these regulatory needs, and Rochi Dahan, manager of regulatory change and compliance at Synechron, who will provide a broader industry perspective on best execution practices in the crypto space. Thank you all for joining us. Let's dive in. Okay, Rochi, let's take a step back here. Can you tell us a little more about MiCA?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Josh. I'm Rochi Dahan, Manager Regulatory Change and Compliance at Synechron. We're a global consulting firm with 55 offices and are active in 20 countries. Our clients vary from traditional financial service providers like banks, but also crypto asset service providers. And we're focusing mainly on consulting and technology. I'm in the regulatory change and compliance practice, specifically on digital assets. And we have experience in implementing traditional regulations like MiFID, EMEA, but today we're focusing on new and emerging regulations like MiCA. So let us start off with an overview of MiCA. The regulation came into effect on the 30th of June 2023. MiCA is an abbreviation of Markets in Crypto Assets Regulation, and it is an EU framework for the regulation of crypto assets, issuers, and service providers. Well, its scope covers almost all types of crypto assets that are not already covered by existing financial legislation, for example, MiFID. But what we see is that this regulation aims to protect investors, to preserve financial stability, and also promote innovation to ensure a fair competition of crypto assets within the EU, of course. So what are the rules that are in MiCA? The rules are mainly on transparency and disclosure of the requirements for the issuance and trading of crypto assets. We also see some rules on authorization, supervision of the service providers that we know, and the operation, organization, and governance of these crypto asset service providers. We'll dive deep into that later, specifically on the best execution, but let's first focus on the key dates and deadlines. It's really crucial for all stakeholders in the field to stay informed on the evolving timeline on MiCA to make sure you're ready, right, to being compliant with the regulation. So obtaining a license is key for your operation and to continue offering crypto products and services. So what we have seen in June 2024, we see that there was an entry into application of the rules on asset reference tokens and e-money tokens. But looking forward in December, so the end of this year, we see that the rules are becoming applicable for specifically other crypto assets. And one of the things is, of course, the authorization and operating conditions for these service providers. So let's zoom in a little bit on, for example, Article 78 of MiCA. We see that crypto asset service providers should always ensure that they obtain the best possible result for their clients, and that should be in line with the execution policy they have established. So factors like price, cost, speed, likelihood of execution and settlement, size, nature, and conditions of custody of the crypto assets, and all other factors are considered, right, within this execution policy. So maybe, Josh, you can tell more about that in the context of ESMA's recent release.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So let's dive in a bit more there, as I mentioned about the best execution. So at the time, I think when this came out on July 31st, what garnered the most attention was really the discussion around reverse solicitation. But what I think is going to be most impactful for the institutional players that are on this call is really a very brief discussion around best execution. So what the release specifically says is, in order to achieve the best possible results, it's a lot of what Rochi just went through, right? So the CAS must take into account factors like price, cost, speed, likelihood of execution. So all the same, the laundry list that was just listed. What I think is probably more important is further in the section where they begin to discuss what a single dealer setup is and some of the regulatory challenges that they see in these arrangements. So they state word for word here, where a certain execution venue might enable the EU broker to obtain the best possible result for one crypto asset, that same execution venue might deliver worse execution quality for other crypto assets compared to other execution venues. So what they're saying there is you can't rely on the fact that Bitcoin price is great and everything else is not as good, or that you're not comparing because you're getting the best price for something that maybe you're trading 90% of your volume through. You really have an obligation to be comparing across all assets. They go on to say, therefore, the EU broker should initially and periodically be aware of the available execution venues and assess the benefits and additional costs that will be passed on to his clients of adding additional execution venues. So, they're really being very clear about what they expect you to be doing if you're going to be doing a single dealer setup there. I think most importantly is they close with a statement that's really really clear. They say, in principle, especially when the EU broker offers execution of orders on a wide variety of crypto assets, it should be considered unlikely that relying on one execution venue only would enable the EU broker to obtain the best possible results. So that's what the release is saying specifically, right? What it doesn't talk about is just how complex it is to manage multiple dealers and multiple relationships and to maintain an infrastructure in that sort of setup. Frank, what are some of the challenges that you've seen for a multi-dealer setup, and how can Talos help?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. I'm Frank. I'm running Sales EMEA for Talos. A lot of challenges, actually, to be honest. One thing, for example, is even that all the venues you potentially want to interact with have different protocols, different ways how they treat their APIs and getting access to them. So I think that comes with the first challenge. And what I would like to showcase, and the complexity around that, but also the easiness of our product, is to show how we can interact with the market seamless in that capacity. What I actually brought up here is what we called our principal trading UI for the Talos platform. And as you already can see, currently me, Frank, as a client of Talos, is connected currently to 47 different venues. So what Talos have done in the past is we've gone to all the major exchanges, all the major OTC desks, all the major market makers, and give you access to all of them if you have a bilateral relationship with them. Interestingly, similar what is being issued in MiCA as well with the ESMA paper, is that you want to have access to multiple venues to make sure that your execution is seamless and also can see, let's say, where the benefit is on trading on those underlying venues. The best way to do that is to demonstrate that you can create an aggregated order book, meaning that if I, for example, want to trade Bitcoin USD and I have access and have a relationship, for example, with Bitfinex, and this is just a random selection, I have a relationship with Kraken, I have a relationship with some of the OTC dealers like B2C2 or flow traders, where I say create a card and now instantly have access to an aggregated order book where I see all the underlying prices from those particular markets. Meaning, whenever I try to execute an order to the market and using those venues, the smart order router mechanism within the Talos platform that will route the order to the best available price at that time in the market. And of course, we can also take the cost in consideration. We can see if we have the buying power to actually interact with a particular market. And the best way to demonstrate it is to actually execute an order. And you can have different type of orders you can execute and request towards the market. earlier today, I already did a market TWAP with a variety of underlying markets where I can actually see how the algo or how the smart order router performed the market and actually outperformed the market in this case. Let me bring it up here on my screen and make it slightly bigger so we can see how the order was being routed. In this case, we try to execute an order of the magnitude of 15 Bitcoin, and where we can see in the analytics how this actually was being distributed across the market and see where it could fill or act and get the best available price at that time. This is just a pure example how clients will benefit of using the Talos platform and actually have proof for the best execution, so-called total cost analysis, as well the ability to interact with multiple market participants by putting one single order towards the venue. Josh, I hand it over back to you. I think this is enough for this moment, but of course happy to liaise with the audience at a later stage to showcase this in more detail.
That's great. Thanks, Frank. I think the demonstration there is really clear. And again, reach out for any additional questions, additional demos. We also received a bunch of questions from everybody, and it was amazing how thoughtful and complex a lot of these questions are. I think it really demonstrates the uncertainty around a lot of this. I'd like to start with one here for Rochi. Maybe this is probably best for you. How might MiCA influence the broader global landscape, in your opinion?
That's a very good question, Josh. MiCA is, of course, quite innovative, but at the same time, it isn't that innovative in a sense, because we already see a lot of, let's say, links with prior regulation like MiFID, right? MiFID 2, we know from the past. But what we see here is it all starts off in the EU, right? You can see that MiCA could maybe start a standardization of crypto regulations. It may set a standard for other regulators, for example, in the US or Singapore, in other countries, all around the world, actually providing a template, right, for those countries to oversee crypto assets. This could lead to more, let's say, uniform global standards. And in the end, it could build trust, right, in our total financial ecosystem. If cryptocurrencies are becoming more regulated, we see that traditional financial institutions might be more willing, right, to integrate them into their service offering. So crypto in the past was, of course, quite a new, let's say, a very exotic and new topic. But what we see now is becoming more normal, right? And we see that maybe this is going to lead to a more interconnected financial ecosystem. So not only traditional assets, but also digital assets. And referring back to, for example, best execution policies, right? If companies really are going to implement these kinds of best execution policies, and also what Frank shown, of course, in a demo from Talos, you see that, investors have more protection in a sense, right? They have more insights in how orders are being made. And this could also bring more trust, of course, for investors when they want to engage in the cryptocurrency market. So we see this is going to have a lot of impact and a lot of influence in the global landscape, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think your point about this not being new and this really being a copy and paste in a lot of ways of what traditional finance has gone through really kind of leads, I think, into the next question that we received that we're going to address here, is what if you only have one liquidity provider? And I think this is a pretty common or a more common setup in digital assets due to the complexity, right, of all of the different API connections that Frank had gone through and a lot of other reasons. It's not very common in traditional finance to have one liquidity provider. So the release itself, I think it really discusses mostly about the single dealer setup. So this is actually relatively easy to cover, just because what the release is talking about is this. What the release is not talking about is everything else that Frank had just said, is the complexity of the next step of having a multi-dealer setup. So let's go through the release a little bit here. So there's essentially just really high hurdles if you're going to just use one dealer. So if you're going to get examined by your local regulator and you have one dealer set up, they're going to expect you to be doing a lot more to ensure that that is the best thing for your customers. So what do you need to do specifically? So number one, Rochi talked a little bit about the kind of policies and procedures, the execution policies that these exchanges and liquidity providers are required to have as part of MiCA, and often probably have already. There's a requirement for people to be gathering those. So if you have one liquidity provider or multiple, you're still supposed to be gathering those and reviewing those policies and procedures to make sure that they're in place and that they're set up to achieve best execution, or how you would define that. You need to document that. So I think this is a piece of MiCA and the maturity of digital assets that we'll see evolve. Is it's one thing to do it, it's another thing to prove it. So you need to have records that showing that you requested these, you received these, and you reviewed them at a senior level. So the release also says you need to initially and periodically assess the costs and benefits of adding additional execution venues. And as we keep saying single dealer, it will be interesting to see if even 2 dealers is not enough. Like what is the expectation of regulators to really achieve best X and for this sort of review? So what does it mean to periodically assess these different venues? It means you probably need some sort of committee or some sort of senior body to make these determinations for you. That's one of my takeaways. That's not in the release specifically, but when they say assess, that's generally what they mean, and that's what you see in MiFID. I also think that the structure they provide in this release in particular, and in other aspects of MiCA, and we've gone over these factors a few times at this point, right? Price, cost, speed, likelihood of execution and settlement, size, nature, conditions of custody of the crypto assets, and as well as any other considerations relevant to execution, kind of a catch-all bucket. So there's 8 of them in total. So this release really is the first time where they've specifically said and suggested a 2-stage approach to that review. So what they're suggesting here is a stage 1 where you're comparing the available execution venues on execution price and cost directly related to execution. So just those first 2, and then you bucket those. So the top ones that kind of qualify from there. Now you can check everything else. So it'll be interesting to see the evolution of this when a regulator comes out and really gives this level of detail. Oftentimes you'll see kind of like a benchmark report come out that maybe all of us can kind of use, and a structure that everybody can use that a regulator would be more familiar with. So that's the setup. Again, while not impossible, they do put the hurdles pretty high, and I would expect scrutiny from regulators if they show up if you have a single dealer setup. Well, in the interest of time, I think we're going to close there. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. And as we come to a close, I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. We hope you found the session valuable and gained some insights into how to navigate MiCA's execution requirements, as well as how Talos can help, and Synechron. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you on our next session. Bye-bye.